we're joined unbelievably by Craig Murray in Beirut. How are you, Craig? You all right?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, I'm good.
Well, you're in a very dangerous place to be in. I mean, how I just want to play a short video that you've put out about some of the things you've seen. I'll just share this now.
Anyway, let's have a look at those videos, and just pay attention. Just think about the kind of blocks these are coming down, and think about who lived there, the lives of the people inside.
I mean, that's horrific, Craig. And the way that you mentioned how we should think about the people in there, because it is a bit about dehumanizing those incidents, isn't it? And you've gone out there to tell us about the human side, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, there's really very, very little in the media in the UK about what's happening in Beirut at all. Despite, there were heavier than ever attacks this morning, about 6:30 this morning. There was a refugee aid centre not far from where I am. I'm staying in a little flat here. And I mean, we walked to it in 5 minutes. There was a refugee aid centre from here destroyed a couple of nights ago, a place where aid parcels, food parcels were packaged for refugees. There are 1.2 million displaced people in the Lebanon. Food parcels were packaged there for refugees, and the Israelis bombed that with 2 missiles, destroyed it, killed 5 people, wounded 19 people, and obviously destroyed all the aid, and that was just down the road, right in the centre of Beirut. It's extraordinary how little coverage there is of this, and of course it's not on the scale of Gaza yet. But they've killed about 3,500 people so far. So it's not, it's not the scale of Gaza, but it's very considerable. And personally, I've no doubt at all that the ultimate aim is the annexation of southern Lebanon as part of Greater Israel. I don't think that's what this is about.
Right. I mean, can I ask you what when you thought about going out there, what was it that made you think of going to Beirut? And also, could you tell us a bit about your experience of arriving there? And because I know it's been a bit difficult for you to start doing all this work.
Yeah. Well, I tried to go. I mean, obviously, no one can get into Gaza, so I wanted to get into the West Bank, and you have to apply for Israeli permission to enter the West Bank because they control all entrances, even though they're illegal occupiers. You still have to get their permission. So I applied for permission to enter the West Bank. I couldn't get there. And then when they started attacking Lebanon, I thought, well, they can't stop me getting into Lebanon, so I came here. Largely, I confess it's not entirely a rational thought process, but I just couldn't stand being, safe in the UK or in Europe, writing about the genocide going on here, and not trying to do more about it. And I thought, well, what can I do? And as you know, I've done stuff. I was involved in the initiation of the ICJ case. I've spoken at the United Nations. But I thought what I can best do now is to get in there and be an eyewitness and get out more of the truth about what Israel is doing. So I can't pretend that it was an entirely intellectual process. It's partly an emotional impulse to do what I can. And I know other people are doing great things. I think Palestine Action, for example, are doing wonderful stuff in the UK. But just this feeling we all have to do absolutely anything we can to stop Israel.
I mean, just to think about your year, you were at the ICJ last winter in a sleeping bag, as I remember. Then you were standing in the election. We've had Assange as well, which you were involved in heavily. You don't seem to be someone who wants to put his feet up.
Well, it's not true. I am someone who desperately wants to put his feet up. I wish all this would end and I could put my feet up. But no, well, it keeps me young, I suppose. It has been an incredible year, but that's very true.
And the thing is, you're you're also in a really dangerous place because, as we've just seen those buildings being blown up and no notice whatsoever. I mean, there's just the whole thing going down. And this is a tweet you put out earlier, which was, you know, we're about to start editing. I think this is your cameraman, videographer. We're about to start editing on our new episode recorded yesterday. Can't wait to show you. Meanwhile, Craig Murray has been busy publishing his latest article. Make sure to subscribe. And then you've written, I won't be in the helmet and flak jacket. Two reasons. I don't mind dying for truth and freedom, but I do mind dying for truth and freedom while dressed like an idiot. Two, press appears to be Hebrew for target, and you've got two emojis of laughter. But Craig, you're taking this a bit light-heartedly, and it's quite scary.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was standing, we got to within sort of 50 yards of where the last place that was bombed in order to report from there. And of course, you're very aware that another bomb could come down. And in fact, the Israelis deliberately target people, rescuing people. I mean, they've killed over 220 first responders, particularly ambulancemen and civil defense workers in Lebanon. They've been deliberately targeting ambulances and civil defense workers. They've destroyed 6 ambulances going to places to rescue people. That's part of the Israeli tactic. So, obviously you're very aware that you could any moment be obliterated by a missile. And on top of which, of course, they do deliberately go for journalists. And on top of which, I think it's fair to say they don't particularly like me. So yes, it is a bit difficult. I don't think, bluntly, I don't think, if they do go for you with a missile, I don't think wearing a flak jacket is actually going to help. And on top of which, there is an element of performance art about it that makes me laugh. When the video which you just showed, where I'm talking about, we're overlooking the affected area, the most bombed area of Beirut, and I'm talking about it, and we introduced those videos of bombs coming down. While I was filming that, just down the road, there were several journalists wearing the full gear, wearing the flak jacket and the big helmet saying press and the big neck stock. And they were all being filmed by their camera teams. And in every single occasion, the camera team were in T-shirts, filming the journalist in full metal jacket. So I suppose I was making fun of, but it's kind of performance art by some journalists. There's this famous footage of Jeremy Bowen in Ukraine, I think, where he's lying on the floor in all this stuff, pretending to be sheltering from Ukrainian shells. And two Russian babushkas walk past him with shopping bags. He's being filmed. So I don't want to get into that whole war correspondent.
Right. Okay. I like your style. It is a bit of a performance thing, isn't it? Yeah, I can see that. All that. Look, I'm really like that guy. in Ukraine, Clive Myrie, he was always wearing that stuff, saying, "Yeah, nothing's happening yet. Are you okay, Clive?" and stuff like that. And he's because he looked all, but nothing happened. But now the thing today that's got a lot of news. I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean, the fact the British are aiming arming Ukraine with missiles that have been fired at Russia. Do you know what? It's had hardly any top media reports on it. It's trying to be subdued as a story. Are you concerned about that?
Yeah, and there's an important difference here in international law that nobody seems to be getting. If you are a country which manufactures armed weapons, and a country comes to you and buys those weapons and then goes off and sells them, and then goes off and fires them at somebody they're at war with, you're not legally liable. You just manufactured the weapons and sold them. You're not involved in the conflict. It's a very different situation when you're giving the weapons in order for them to be used. You are then a party to a conflict yourselves, and it becomes perfectly legal for the party attacked to attack the state which gave the weapons for the attack, and in particular to attack the munitions factories which provide such weapons. And as I say, there's a distinction there between a state just being an arms dealer, just selling. Frankly, I think the arms industry is immoral anyway, so I don't see a huge moral distinction. But there is an important legal distinction. The fact we are giving these weapons, or United Kingdom is giving these weapons to the Ukraine in order deliberately to be shot at Russia, rather than just selling them to Ukraine like you'd sell them to anybody. That's a very important legal difference, and it puts us in conflict with Russia, and it also makes it perfectly legitimate for Russia to target us. Thank God Putin, I think, is not as mad as Biden and Starmer, so I don't think he is going to target us. But I just want to underline how totally crazy this is and how it does change the legal situation.
I mean, what strikes me is that while Trump is not in office, Biden, sort of, who's got dementia, is being asked to start a war effectively with Russia in that window. I mean, this is surely undemocratic. I mean, he shouldn't even be. I mean, physically, he's not well enough to be president. I mean, he's leading it, and Starmer's egging him on. Do you think, what they're doing? That while there's this window between now and Trump, his inauguration, is that what's going on here?
Yeah, I think they're deliberately trying to make the situation escalate to the point where Trump cannot solve it, because Trump has said he wants to, quickly negotiate a peace in Ukraine. And I think they're trying to make peace impossible before he comes into power, which is immoral. And of course, it's not Biden. He probably has no idea what's happening. It will be Jake Sullivan in particular, the national security advisor, and a couple of other hawks in the administration. I'm sorry.
The good news, I suppose, today was this. This is from the ICC's website. Situation in the state of Palestine. ICC pre-trial chamber rejects the state of Israel's challenges to jurisdiction and issues of warrants of arrest for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. How significant is that to you?
Well, I think it's extremely significant. It's very good news. God knows why it's taken them a year to do it. It's extraordinary it's taken this long. But and of course, they had to do it after the International Court of Justice said that there was a plausible case for genocide and quoted Israeli ministers, including Gallant and Netanyahu, as having shown evidence of genocidal intent. It was then impossible for the ICC to say nothing is happening. So this was always going to happen. It's been delayed and delayed and delayed, and I'm glad it's happened now. But it does now make it extremely difficult for Starmer, for example, to continue to pretend that there's no evidence Israel is doing anything wrong, when the ICC has said there's a plausible case. And of course, it makes it very difficult for Netanyahu ever to travel anywhere, because if he goes to any developed state apart from the United States of America and 90% of the rest of the world, he will be arrested and handed over to the ICC. So this is actually, this is something of a game changer, and I think it really will change the debate. It's very, very difficult for the elites, the political and media elites. I call them elites. There's nothing elite about them, but the political and media class to totally ignore institutions like the ICC and the ICJ. That's meant to be part of the neoliberal belief system, these particular international institutions. So I do think it's going to help shift the debate, and it will also, of course, be very helpful, to quote, in UK courts with all this persecution of UK activists that's going on. In that, the argument that we are stopping to make. We are trying to stop war crimes. Well, the existence of those war crimes is now strongly reinforced in legal terms. So yeah, but of course it's a start. It's only a start. There are obviously thousands of people who are also guilty in Israel, and then there are all the Western politicians who have armed and supplied and funded this. So yeah,
can I just quickly come in?
Great news. But
If they arrest Netanyahu, I mean, if someone arrests Netanyahu, is that a green light for then further people to be arrested? I mean, because an arrest warrant is one thing, but the actual arrest is the big deal, isn't it? If someone actually does that.
Yeah, I think he will be arrested if he travels. I think even the UK, I don't think even Starmer would be able to find a way not to arrest him when there is actually an arrest warrant out for him. So you're not going to find him given immunity in the UK. I know there's a lot of speculation Starmer will do that, but I don't think even Starmer would dare do that, because there's now a formal ICC arrest warrant. That's difficult. That's different from in previous occasions. Israeli politicians have had special provision made to protect them from the possibility of arrest for war crimes, but there weren't any actual ICC warrants out for them at the time. This is very different. This is a game changer.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, look, the thing that I wanted to emphasize most of all is that you're out there risking your life, and we really should support you, because you need some support financially to keep going. You have a crowdfunder, don't you? I mean, can you tell us how much you need, and or anything, any information that might persuade people to donate towards it?
Yeah, I think perhaps if I explain why we need money. I mean, we've travelled here, we've rented an apartment, and with all the refugees and everything, and general war, that's not cheap here at the moment. We need translators and interpreters. We need drivers. We're doing a lot of video work, so we need production facilities. We've got film editor working for us today on stuff we've already filmed. It all just adds up. Then there are countless permits to be got to go anywhere, and but the whole thing is costing something like £60,000. It is going to cost to maintain ourselves here for a few weeks and produce the work, and we've done it entirely out of our own pockets. We have no backing whatsoever, except for what people who read our stuff and people who want to have that alternative news from Lebanon, that alternative voice to be. BBC and CNN and people, their correspondents covering the Lebanon are sitting in Tel Aviv,
Right.
giving us the Israeli spin. The BBC News hasn't got anyone here. So if unfortunately, there just is no other way than to ask people who support us politically to put their hands in the pocket. I know people who support us politically, or people on the left politically, are continually having to put their hands in their pocket to try to fund things. But we don't have the corporations, we don't have the state. We only have us. So if people can go to my website, craigmurray.org.uk, craigmurray.org.uk, and there are a variety of different funding options there where you can contribute. But I mean, bluntly, if we don't get some money coming in shortly, we're going to have to give up and go home because we are way short of having raised enough money to sustain what we are doing here. And I think that would be a terrible shame, because I think it really is very, very important. The Americans are trying to force the Lebanese effectively to give up control of southern Lebanon. And they're doing that through so-called diplomacy and through bombing, through terrorizing the Lebanese civilization. And it's very, very important that people are here to report it. And I know Gaza's terrible, the genocide is sickening, but this is all part of the same agenda. This is all part of the same thing. And this is the next Israeli step.